grim dark of the far future, there is only war. Throughout history, we have seen untold horrors and misery inflicted on humanity by the forces of chaos and their associated ruinous powers, with trillions upon trillions of lives across countless worlds being decimated, enslaved or corrupted by the evil forces of chaos. Humanity fights a constant pitched battle against the dark tide of corruption that seeks to sweep across the galaxy, especially in the current setting with the opening of the Great Rift. But there are those who would stand against the darkness of the warp, and one of humanity's greatest champions was the brightest one, Sanguinius. Greetings all, I am your guide, the Archivist. Today I will dive into an overview of Sanguinius, one of the greatest of the Primarchs of mankind, and his eventual fall at the hands of Horus. Who was Sanguinius? The archives hold a vast wealth of knowledge on Sanguinius, also known as the Great Angel and the brightest one during his lifetime, and was the Primarch of the Blood Angels Legion of Space Marines and the genetic ancestor of the Adeptus Astartes chapters who comprised the Sanguinary Brotherhood in the 41st millennium. He was in many ways often considered the noblest and most respected of the Primarchs, even by his other brothers including Horus, despite the latter's jealousy and resentment of Sanguinius' resolute will. Despite this, he was tragically slain during the climax of the Horus Heresy at the Siege of Terra, defending the Emperor of Mankind from the War Master Horus aboard his flagship, the Gloriana-class battleship, Vengeful Spirit. Though Horus slew Sanguinius, who had once been one of his closest and greatest friends among the Primarchs, the archives state that Imperial legend holds it was the chink in Horus's armour created by the Great Angel that allowed the Emperor to slay the arch-heretic and thus prevent mankind from falling to the corruption of the ruinous powers of chaos. Sanguinius was considered by many to be a true Primarch, who embodied the purity, spirit and will of the Emperor most completely and most truly. Even Horus was envious of his similarity to the Emperor, remarking, "Sanguinius, it should have been him. He has the vision and strength to carry us to victory, and the wisdom to rule once victory is won. For all his aloof coolness, he alone has the Emperor's soul in his blood. Each of us carries part of our father within us, whether it is his hunger for battle, his psychic talent, or his determination to succeed. Sanguinius holds it all. It should have been his." Origins. The archives show that the Emperor of Mankind knew he would need a mighty force if he was going to lead his quest across the galaxy. That immortal godlike being crafted incredible transhuman warriors to help him conquer the galaxy and reunite mankind's lost colony worlds in the wake of the Age of Strife. Amongst these legions were the Blood Angels, the 9th Legion, who from their earliest days fought staunchly in service of the Emperor and their Primarch both. The Emperor, a genius like of which the ages have never seen, had mastered genetic manipulation of human genomes and set about creating 20 transhuman warriors, his Primarchs, to lead his legions in the coming wars, each an embodiment of an aspect of war. The Primarchs were created in secret, but Chaos's ruinous powers intervened and scattered them across the galaxy, where they were lost for some time. Sanguinius came to the world of Baal, where the touch of chaos landed him in his gestation pod with tiny wings, like that of an angel. The folk of pure blood nearly killed him outright then, but decided to spare him as he was the most perfect child they'd ever seen. Like all Primarchs, Sanguinius grew at an astonishing rate and was almost fully mature by a year old in standard human years. By his adulthood, he was a glorious, beyond human figure for the people of Baal Secundus, and came to lead them, and revered his wisdom and his power. The archives state that when the Emperor came for Sanguinius, his ship landed at the Conclave of the Blood, and the Emperor entered the massive natural amphitheatre that had been carved from the Mount Seraph by the Baalite tribes to serve as a central meeting place. Those of the pure blood attended Sanguinius' address by the tens of thousands. The Emperor stood within their ranks, a shining golden figure amongst the tattered warriors of the blood. But the Emperor knew humility as well as divinity, and he listened as attentively as the warriors there. Sanguinius gave a speech which lifted the very souls of his people, giving them more than hope, at its conclusion soaring into the air above them with a shout that every man there echoed. Thus the Emperor was convinced without a doubt that the angel was indeed one of his lost sons. Others amongst the Primarchs are said to have fought against the Emperor when they first met, but this was not the case with Sanguinius. When approached, Sanguinius recognized the Emperor immediately. Many believe that Sanguinius's reputed ability to foresee future events informed him of the Emperor's visit, explaining his reaction. He fell to his knees, crystal tears falling from his cheeks into a crimson cloud. Where they fell, alabaster flowers thrived upon the barren and toxic soils of Baal Secundus. The Emperor bade him stand, and looked upon the myriad faces raised unto him, proud and resolute. He saw that the men and women of the blood were both fair in mind and deed, possessed of a small part of the nobility and strength of their leader. Thus Sanguinius inherited his birthright, the 9th legion of mankind, the Blood Angels. The finest of those amongst his faithful from Baal were also raised to Astartes from their common human form, and thus Sanguinius was born, and joined the Emperor on his crusade across the galaxy to solidify humanity against the forces of darkness. His appearance. The archives show that Sanguinius' appearance was one of the most unique amongst the Primarchs, the living embodiment of an angelic figure. Resplendent in glittering armor, shrouded in white wings, Sanguinius was the noblest of the Primarchs in physical aspect. Sanguinius was remarked about by many as extremely proud, even arrogant, and supremely confident even in the face of the darkest shadow. The detail of the Primarch's intricately worked artificer armor was rendered perfectly, the sculpted edges of the golden battleplate visible along the fine etching across the brassarts, shoulder guards, and breastplate. He was truly an angel in form and also in his countenance. On his chest was a heavy ornamental roundel, carved from huge megalodari rubies. The central jewel was cut into the shape of a heart and set on a mount of gold flames, and it signified the burning spirit of the Blood Angels as expressed through their Primarch. Atop it were 4 more ruby discs, each dedicated to one of the worlds from which the 9th Legion had drawn its numbers, Terra in the first instance, then Baal and her 2 moons. Across one shoulder he wore a ceremonial war cloak, the black dappled pelt of a Carnodon, similar in form to the extinct snow leopards of old Earth but much, much larger. The Ice Stalker had been Sanguinius' first kill during the pacification of Tagar Pentarus, the first battle he had fought beside his legion after reuniting with his father the Emperor. This ceremonial wear was extremely important to Sanguinius, as well as his bond with his battle brothers. His noble spirit and appearance can be seen through the details of his armor, as well as his bond with his legion. Powers and gear. As with all Primarchs, Sanguinius was a supremely proficient warrior and fighter, possessing a martial skill that was rivaled by few others even amongst the Primarchs themselves. Even from an early age, his skill in combat was exceptionally high, and often led his warriors from the front, as the Blood Angels were powerful shock troops. It was often said that Sanguinius, despite his peaceful nature, was considered a match for Horus and Lion L. Johnson in combat ability. Sanguinius had the ability to fly using his wings, which also gave him a unique and powerful advantage over his brothers and also over his enemies, able to sweep down on battlefields and also quickly redeploy and take advantage of weaknesses in enemy defences. The jetpack shock troopers that the Blood Angels are known for likely took inspiration from Sanguinius in this aspect as well. As with the other Primarchs, Sanguinius also possessed a strong level of psychic ability. All of the Primarchs were powerful psykers in their own right, though some of them, such as Magnus the Red, were incredibly strong in this aspect by comparison. Sanguinius' psychic ability was most apparent insofar as he had the ability for premonitions, and throughout his life saw small glimpses of the future, in a similar way to the Emperor of Mankind has done, trying to predict and control the outcomes of what may happen. This is how Sanguinius saw his own death at the hands of his closest brother Horus during the Heresy. Before he confronted him, he told the Emperor of his vision, but that he would not try to avoid it, but rather face it head-on in an attempt to change his fate. This stunned the Emperor, and is one of the greatest reactions the Emperor has ever given in the archives we can find. Perhaps Sanguinius' finest power, however, was his pure soul. This attribute, whilst not as tangible as his other powers and strength, did lead him through some of the darkest moments of his life, and shaped him into the Primarch that he was. No one was so revered or respected as Sanguinius, and Horus was said to be envious of Sanguinius' spirit, as it so resembled the Emperor that Horus wanted to be close to. His deeds. The archives show that Sanguinius during the Great Crusade was one of the Emperor's most trusted generals. Throughout it all, the Blood Angels and their Primarch Sanguinius fought at the Emperor's side, serving as honor god to their beloved creator. Driven by a fiery temperament, the 9th Legion swiftly earned a fearsome reputation as shock troops, which came to feed a rivalry between them and the assault-orientated World Eaters Legion. Yet in truth, the Blood Angels were never as ferocious as the World Eaters, for the wise influence of Sanguinius tempered their bloodlust. After being introduced to all of his fellow Primarchs, over the long Terran decades of the Great Crusade, Sanguinius formed the closest bonds with his brother Horus, Leman Russ, and Jagadai Khan, also forged close ties born in blood and battle with the Lunar Wolves, Space Wolves, and White Scars legions respectively. Though he was yet in the early days of his legend, Sanguinius was thought to be the noblest of the Primarchs even then, and was ever deep in the Emperor's council. One of the burgeoning Imperium's greatest victories that Sanguinius played a large role in occurred during the Ulanor Crusade, a vast imperial assault on the Orc Empire of the Overlord Urlak-Urak. The capital world of this empire, Ulanor Prime, the site of the final assault, lay in the Ulanor system of the Ulanor sector, which had long been under the dominion of Urlak-Uruk's greenskin pocket empire. The Ulanor Crusade included the deployment of 100,000 Space Marines, 8 million Imperial Army troops, 100 Titans of the Legio Mortis, and 600 starships of the Imperialis Armada and their support personnel. After this, Horus would be raised to the rank of War Master by the Emperor, which inadvertently led to his eventual resentment of the Emperor's absence, and then corruption by the Chaos Gods. Following the corruption of Horus by the Chaos Gods after his mortal wounding upon the plague moon of the feral world of Davin, he began to lay the seeds for his coming rebellion, to overthrow the Emperor, and eventually assume the imperial throne in his bid to rule the galaxy. In the midst of the darkness of the Horus Heresy, the Blood Angels never wavered, but held true at the Emperor's side. Sanguinius would be wounded by the betrayal of Horus, but he took the Emperor's side and would never be swayed to chaos. The Heresy. The extent of Sanguinius' involvement in the Heresy was fragmented due to the cut-off nature of his legion from the mainstay of that fighting at the time. Horus had known about the Blood Angels' fatal flaw, the Red Thirst, for a time before the Horus Heresy. The Red Thirst, the deep desire to drink the blood of their enemies, is the deepest failing and curse of the Blood Angels, and often leads to members of the Legion succumbing to a blind bloodthirsty rage, losing control of themselves and killing all those in their path to get their desire to drink the blood of their enemies. Knowing this fatal flaw, Horus sent Sanguinius on the Cygnus campaign, in which he was wounded greatly by the demon Kubanda, who taunted and mocked him with words of betrayal before slaughtering 500 Blood Angels before Sanguinius' wounded eyes, causing him to black out from the trauma of the psychic backlash. As a result of seeing their fallen Primarch, the first instance of the Black Rage overcame the Blood Angels, and they fell into an enraged madness, tearing across the battlefield. This greater flaw would always haunt the Blood Angels to this day. The brutal violence of the demon Kubanda had unleashed something dark within the psyche of the Space Marines, the thirst for blood that would not be slaked until every taint of chaos had been erased from the planet. Even the mighty Kyrus was ultimately banished back to the Immaterium by his death at the Blood Angels' hands. Only when the planet was cleansed did the rage of the Blood Angels finally subside. Though Cygnus Prime was freed from its thrall by the forces of chaos, the cost of that victory was far higher than any could have wished. The berserker rage the Blood Angels had experienced had left a brooding shadow on their souls that would manifest in centuries to come as the great curse that would manifest in the centuries to come as the great curse that would afflict the Blood Angels and their successors. His final fate. The archives show that during the Battle of Terra, the bloodthirster Kubanda once again confronted Sanguinius, reappearing for the first time to him since the slaughter of his legion, this time atop the Eternity Gate before the entranceway to the inner palace of the Emperor's throne room. The greater demon struck Sanguinius, casting the angel upon the broken stone. Preparing to strike a killing blow, the Blood Angel's Primarch calling upon his last reserves of strength and power. With a massive effort, he leapt upon the bloodthirster, seized it bound the wrist and ankle, and rose up high into the air, smashing the demon's form across his knee and breaking the creature's back with a powerful crack. He then swung the body of Commander around and hurled the broken behemoth into the midst of the demonic host, slamming the Eternity Gate shut against the ravening hordes and preventing the fall of the palace. Yet the fall of Terra still seemed only a matter of time, for all the heroics of its defenders. Having long planned for this exact moment due to his vision, the Emperor teleported above the hellish craft Horus's flagship as the shields had been lowered. As the shields had been lowered, along with Sanguinius and Rogel Dawn and a contingent of the Imperial Fists, the Blood Angels and the Legio Custodes close behind him. Like his father, Sanguinius was gifted with the power of foresight and had long been able to foresee what lay ahead. His soul was pure, and the prophecies he spoke of inevitably came to be. It can thus be surmised that he knew full well he was going to his doom when he confronted the War Master, and yet he went without hesitation. Whether this act was prompted by fatalism or loyalty to the Emperor is a point debated by many Imperial theologians lacking in faith. However, there is no doubt in the minds of the Blood Angels. They maintain that the angel walked into the lion's den out of duty, knowing full well what the outcome would be. Battle raged through the demon-infested warship, and Sanguinius became separated from the Emperor and his other comrades. Now isolated, legend tells that he was brought through artifice before the treacherous Horus. In evil cunning, fully in the grip of the power of all four major Chaos gods, the War Master offered Sanguinius one final chance to renounce the Emperor and to join with Horus in the inevitable victory of the traitors and Chaos. Yet the Primarch of the Blood Angels held true and refused. Rejected, Horus flew into a rage and attacked. Although bearing the wounds of his earlier actions and knowing it would almost certainly spell his doom, Sanguinius immediately attacked the corrupted War Master. Even at the peak of his powers, Sanguinius could not have hoped to prevail against the embodiment of chaotic power Horus had become, and the Primarch was weary and wounded from his travails on Terra during the battle against Commander. Horus, in his limitless malice, made sure that Sanguinius' death was the most painful and foul that the boundless evils in his service could administer. The War Master's psychic assault echoed not just through space, but also through time, resonating in the souls of Sanguinius' children. The Primarch's sacrifice is thought to have kept Horus occupied long enough for the Emperor to reach the arch-traitor at the very depths of his lair. When the Emperor at last entered Horus's sanctum, he found the rebellious War Master standing above Sanguinius' broken, bleeding corpse. In the battle that followed, Horus was finally vanquished, though the Emperor had also been mortally wounded and near to death. There are many tales told of this final battle, and though the exact facts are long lost, one detail holds through all the recitations and millennia since. Despite the Emperor's great power, he could not have bested Horus had not the blade of Sanguinius wrought a chink in the War Master's armour, and because of this, the Blood Angels claim their Gene Father to be the greatest of all the Primarchs. The pain inflicted upon the Primarch during his battle with Horus was so total that every one of his sons carried the echo imprinted deep within their soul and their genomes to this day. The psychic echo of Sanguinius' sacrifice can still be heard by the Blood Angels down through the millennia, causing a madness and a fury to come upon them as they see the dark visions of their Primarch's final hours. And so it was that the Blood Angels came to bear their blood curses of the Black Rage and the Red Thirst, and they bear it still. Sanguinius may have been defeated, but his memory and his chapters live through history to this day, and Sanguinius is venerated as one of the greatest figures that mankind has. And so I have now covered the content for this video, but if there's anything that has been missed, please share them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this content, please remember to like the subscribe and like waypoints down below. In the grim dark of the far future, there is only war.